In this clip, I'm going to talk about some of the more important share ownership clauses that you typically encounter in a term sheet. My focus will be on clauses related to pro rata investments, right of first refusal, drag along, and on vesting. Let's kick off with pro rata investments. Earlier in the module, I referred to the fact that venture funds will often reserve money for follow-up investments in a company after the initial investment round. The reason they do this is to avoid dilution if the company is doing well and then wants to raise more capital. So if the original investing fund, for example, owns 30% in the company and more equity capital was issued to other investors, its stake could be diluted to, say, 20%. A pro rata investment provision in the term sheet would protect the original investing fund by giving them the right, but not the obligation, to purchase its pro rata amount of future rounds of financing to avoid dilution. In most cases, this right only applies to major investors as defined in the term sheet. Sometimes the pro rata investment clause can become a bit problematic when a company is a darling of investors, because when a subsequent financing round is attempted, a new investor may struggle to meet its target in terms of percentage ownership. Remember, one of the deadly sins of venture investing is picking the right company in which to invest, but failing to own enough of that company. The next clause I'm going to focus on is the right of first refusal. The right of first refusal means that if you're an owner of shares in a startup and you want to sell them, you can go to an outside party who wants to buy them and get them to give you a price. But before you sell the shares to this third party, you need to give the company first and then the other investors the right to purchase your shares at the same price. The right of first refusal is really meant to disincentivize shareholders from selling their shares to third parties. It allows the company and its existing investors to control in whose hands the stock ends up in. This is important for a startup because it doesn't want unknown investors controlling significant shares in the company and being able to influence corporate decisions. The right of first refusal gives the company an opportunity to determine if they're comfortable with the third party before they approve the transaction, and if the company and existing investors are comfortable, they can waive their right of first refusal. If the company is not comfortable with the third party, then it can effect the purchase itself. The co-sale agreement is the opposite of a right of first refusal. And a co-sale says that if I offer shares to a third party, all the other investors get a right to sell their pro rata portion of shares to that buyer at the same price. So the right of first refusal and co-sale clauses in the term sheets are generally intended to make it harder for ordinary shareholders, particularly the founders, to sell their shares. The venture capital funds are effectively investing in the founders. They're usually the largest shareholders, and they want to maintain maximum alignment with them to grow the equity value of the company. The third important clause I'm going to discuss is the drag-along provision. A drag-along provision is just a clause in an agreement that enables a majority shareholder to force a minority shareholder to join the sale of a company. The majority owner doing the dragging must give the minority shareholder the same price, the same terms, the same conditions as any other seller. And the drag-along provision is intended to prevent minority shareholders from holding out on a deal so that they can get a better deal for themselves. The drag-along provision itself is important to the sale of many companies because buyers are often looking for complete control of a company. And drag-along rights help to eliminate the current minority owners, and the company can sell 100% of the existing shares to any potential buyer. So whilst drag-along rights are meant to mitigate minority shareholder obstructions, they can be beneficial for minority shareholders. This type of provision requires that the price, the terms, that the conditions of a share sale be homogeneous across the board. And that means small equity shareholders can realize favorable terms that they might not have otherwise obtained. The fourth important clause relating to governance in term sheets I'm going to discuss is that of vesting. I raised the issue of vesting earlier in the module, and I explained how vesting is used as a means to keep the founders and the employees engaged with the startup and to align the goals of these guys with the equity investors into the company. So the vesting of founder shares is often one of the most sensitive topics in a financing round. Founders understandably wonder why they should agree to potentially losing shares in their own company, no matter how unlikely. But especially at the early stages, the existing assets of a business are not the key motivation of a VC fund to invest. What drives the investor is the potential of the business, and in order to achieve that, the founding team is all important. Investors therefore seek to set up a mechanism that minimizes the risk of a founder leaving, and if it happens, it will lessen the impact. So founder share vesting in principle achieves this objective. A departure by a founder will be more painful, and it therefore increases their commitment to the company. While these principles have now become largely uncontroversial, you've got to be careful because the devil is in the detail. And the vesting structure needs to find a balance between the objectives of the investor and the legitimate interest of the founders to protect their ideas and their achievements.